Good morning, everybody, and welcome to another easy morning here on Adobe Live. Thank you for joining me here, everyone in the chat, coming and hanging out. I'm Evan Abrams. I'm here to talk to you about motion design, visual effects, After Effects. Today, we're warming it up with some easy stuff in Adobe After Effects. It's my favorite program in which to work, and today we are going to be making some templates. We're going to start your day with some delicious Mogurt in your diet. It kind of helps things go smoothly in your workflow, I guess. And hopefully this is going to be an easy transition. If you've been hanging out with us over the weeks here as we talk about After Effects, we've talked about shape layers, we've talked about text layers, and now we are going to talk about putting things together. Maybe we're going to talk about expressions a little bit, so please bear with us. And this is just part of a big, rich, full day of activities here on the Adobe Live program, here on Behance Live. If you're watching this on YouTube, please come and join us on behance.net/live and join in the chat. I love to see people hanging out, chilling in the chat with us here, asking questions. And, if anything is confusing or strange, please get at me in the chat. I want to help you through as best I can. Speaking of other things that are going on today, this is just the start of the day. This is only the beginning. What I'd like to talk about first is our schedule of things. So I'm going to be getting it started here in here in After Effects, and then we're going to be we've got a Photoshop challenge by Paul Tranny coming up. And if you like motion design, if motion graphics are your thing, definitely come back around for motion graphics with Colton Cooker. He's doing some awesome things. I think he's talking about band graphics today, kind of like some music video stuff. It is really cool. If you caught it yesterday, it's really nice to see him work and some of the amazing things he gets up to. And of course, working in Illustrator, draw along with Kyle T. Webster, packaging design going on today as well. So if you've got the time, hang out with us here. We really appreciate you hanging out. Speaking of, what we're going to be doing today is making a motion graphics template using Adobe After Effects, and then we'll be jumping over into Premiere and seeing how it works. And like I said, we are going to be talking a lot about functionality. I'm going to be talking some heady stuff about design decisions. Folks in the chat, it's so great to see everybody here. We got people from the UK. Hello, Stuart. We've got Steve Festus is back from New Zealand. Fantastic. Oh my goodness, so many people from all over the world. Amanda, good to see you. Oh, Sean McMahon back, hold it down here in the National Capital Region. So good to see so many people coming back. So hopefully this is going to be good. Oh, and Stuart is saying the timing is perfect because he has to make some templates. So it's good. It's and if you are an international person, Tim in the chat letting you know that we've got French, German, Australian, UK streams, 12 hours of streams coming on today. So get into it, hang out. Scott McMahon, there you are. Oh, it's too early for Evan sometimes. Actually, it's only 10:30 where I am. I don't have any excuses. I'm just slow today. However, oh man, Scott, did I say your name wrong? My goodness. Oh, Scott's been hanging out on the chat as we do weekend stuff here as well. So it's so good to have people here. But let's get into it. Let's see what we're doing and how we're going to make it happen. So here is a wonderful photo of my doggy. This is my little dog. I know I can't drink coffee, Amanda. It's bad for my heart. I have heart problems. I can't do it. What we're going to do is we're going to create our first template here in After Effects, and then we are going to go on over into Premiere, and we're going to make it happen in here. So what we want to do is create something in our motion graphics interface, and we're going to drop it in this space. Now, to do that, we have to make a number of decisions, a lot of critical choices here in After Effects. Designing templates is not quite the same as just creating titles. Making titles or lower thirds or these bespoke things, if you're just making one-of-a-kind things, we don't have to make the same design decisions, but we're going to go through the process from first to last, and hopefully it's all good. So we might do exactly what the example is here, but I kind of want to keep it loose and keep it varied here. So I know there's some folks in the chat saying that they had templates that they must do for some work. I think it was Stuart bringing that up. They have a template to create for a company feed. But if you have template needs, if you have template problems, please let me know and we'll try to solve them. But let's start with some of the basics, all right? What we're doing is creating elements that we then want to push them into a space that we call the Essential Graphics window. You can call up your Essential Graphics window by going Window, Essential Graphics. Okay, so hopefully that's good. And we'll get that loaded up, and it opens up this window here. And this is sort of our go-between that we can pass information between After Effects and Premiere. We're setting all of the things that we're going to allow future people to play around with and to touch, right? So we're basically building a little control interface in this space. But before we do that, we need to start deciding what the thing is actually going to be, how it's going to work, how we're going to set ourselves up for success, basically, and to make everything nice and smooth. So let's start from scratch, as I imagine you would have to. This one here is our example. And we're going to start by, let's make a lower third. Because I think that's usually where we start with things. Or maybe we'll make a title. Let's make a lower third and then a title. Now, when we're starting off, I usually don't talk about composition settings, but in this case, it actually is important that you need to have your sort of frame width and height. We need to make sure that this, and especially this frame rate, is going to be the same as the kind of sequence you're going to put it into later on in Premiere. If you expect everything to work correctly and look as you expect it to, I highly recommend harmonizing these ideas right here, especially frame rate and frame size. Now, you might not know immediately what that's going to be, right? But usually you're going to be working in a 24 frames per second situation. Maybe you're going to be working in a 30 frames per second situation. If you're in Australia, for example, you'll probably be at the 25 frames per second situation. So knowing what you're going to be doing with this later is going to be very helpful. So for those of you making corporate graphics or maybe something for broadcast, just be aware that you need to work in the broadcast standards that you're going to be using the template in later, right? You want to make sure the template fits with where it's going. So that's our first consideration that we want to put into this, okay? So we're just going to go ahead and create that, and we're making lower thirds. Now, I'm going to remove the essential graphics for now. We're going to come back to it. We will return. But first, we just want to lay things out as we like them out here. Now, since this is a lower third, we want to design as if this is the final frame, okay? So if this is how the frame will look at the end, so imagine there's going to be a video in here, and in our example, I'm going to be putting my doggy in there. Hello. You might as well put a placeholder image in there just to start with. And if you're going to be using something in here that won't be rendered, that won't be used, you might as well turn it into a guide layer so that when we preview this, when we start using it later, this doesn't get rendered. So the reason that we want to put an image or something back here when we start working is that most commonly we're putting footage behind things like a lower third, for example, and there's going to be the shot might be busy, the shot might be high contrast, it might be light, it might be dark. You want to be able to test and understand how your design is going to look before we go exporting it. Amanda the dog's name is Sherbert. This is Sherbert the dog. He's been with us for a few years now. He's a lot of fun, and Sherbert does solve crimes. Definitely, he's a let's say a very formidable dog detective. So the first thing we want to do, like we said, we're going to create a lower third, and we want to imagine that this is actually the final frame where this is going to be used. So we need this to be, the word we would use is in situ. It needs to be in the place where it needs to go. So I'm going to start by calling up our title and action safe. So here's something you can call up that is the title and action safe. Now, usually, for those of you who may be young and may not know, those of you who are perhaps born in an age after CRT TVs, or who absorb most of their content from the web, or make most of your content for the web, the title and action safe may be a strange concept, right? But this is basically showing how much of the actual information that we're going to be putting out will actually be covered by, say, the plastic bezel or the plastic casing of a television, or be lost out in the edges, in the margins. So I'm going to call up the rulers by hitting Command R, Control R on a PC, and I'm going to drag a ruler out down here to this most inner bound. And I might drag another one down here as well into this space. Now, this is our floor. We can go no lower than this area. That's right, Scott. We're talking about those good 4:3 TV vibes that we used to have. Though we are working in 16:9, we're still keeping the title and action safe up here. But there's a second measurement I need, and that's the third of the screen. These are called lower thirds because they usually live in the lower third of the screen. So I would drag a little ruler out here to the third bar of the screen down here. And with that, I can now stop relying on my proportion grid. If your proportion grid doesn't look like mine, see, mine has these boxes here, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 boxes. You can always go to your preferences, and you can go into your grids and guides preferences. And after my pinwheel stops going, you may need to change your proportional grid horizontal and vertical boxes. I prefer 6x6 because I am boring. Like that. This is a system I use to keep myself in bounds sometimes. But if you need to adjust your proportion grid, you can do so in here. Okay. Umacore is asking, how long did it take you to get used to today's frame? You know, they're saying that they were annoyed at how everything felt squished down at the beginning. For me, I am maybe a bit of a non-traditionalist sometimes. I really love new and strange formats. Also, I've done some work in stadium graphics quite a bit. So those are formats that are totally unlike any reasonable ratios and frame sizes that you might be dealing with. So I was a little bit conditioned over the years to already be playing in strange spaces. So now that we're dealing with 9x16s and we're dealing with squares, I was like, I get it. I'm here with you. I'm already in the zone. And for me, that was pretty normal stuff. Also, I've been doing some app work and stuff. So, you know, during that transitional period, and 4:3 was already on its way out when I had started to work. So 16:9 had become HD was becoming the standard at the time. So, but yeah, you can get into all kinds of sizes of display. So it's crazy town. But we're setting these rulers out. Remember, we're setting these rulers out to help us design material and to keep it down here in this area. Yeah, and Scott's got the size of it. Those bowl rim graphics are the ones I'm talking about. 5,000 by 40, 16,000 by 10. Really strange pixel aspect ratios. But we're using these rulers to understand where the lower third is going to go, right? Because now we can remove our proportional grid, and we know that down here is the space that we want to work in. Granted, our shots will likely be framed with our subject matter. Let's frame this up a little bit. This is a really tight shot on Sherbert, now that I think about it. This would not be acceptable for putting lower thirds on. But, the idea is that we want to think about where these elements are going to be, what's going to be overlapped, what's going to be cut off. So, for example, Leonard is asking, what are we doing today? We're making templates. We're making lower third templates to start. We'll probably do some title templates, and that's what we're doing. So the first thing I want to do is to increase the readability of what I'm going to put in the world. So design consideration number one, we're making graphics to be read and understood. How do we increase the readability? If I just go ahead and take some text and I'm going to type it out, and I'm going to type out the name of the dog here, Sherbert, and I am using Filson Soft, a wonderful font that I believe you can find. I think that this is on the Adobe font situation, I believe. And I'm going to set its paragraph to be from the left. Here's another design consideration we're making, okay? I'm going to set the character up to 100. Now, why am I typing it over on the left, right? So your paragraph could be center, could be left, could be right, could be whatever. The point is that this is going to be variable. This is going to change, right? And it's going to change a lot. It could be Herbert Q. Filsenberg, right? So depending on whose name gets typed in here, you want to consider when you're designing this, what is the longest possible name that might get typed in here, or you need to start making considerations for wrangling those ideas, right? Now, I like Filson. Filson is my friend. Let me call up the action safe real quick because I forgot to drag out another grid line. I want to know these lines here to give us some control over how far in this direction things can go. So I just realized that I typed Herbert. Q. Filsenberg is a weird name. So during this thing, I'm going to be asking folks in the chat for all kinds of suggestions. This is a kind of an improv show. So think about the longest that the name could possibly be, right? And as you can see, if we put a name this long, it's already bumping out past the halfway point. This is really dominating the frame. It's crazy. So this is Sherbert's regular name, Sherbert P. Doggo. It's kind of how he does it. But the other thing to remember is that if we're putting this on the web, we don't really need to care that much about these particular guidelines, right? We're not going to be super harmed by having this over at the side if there is no bezel for us, bezel, that's the word I want, to harm us over here. So just remember, this is kind of our outside box. We don't want to go outside that box, but don't let it constrain you too much. So let's say, oh boy, Tim in the chat, always getting me. I just noticed you changed your name to Herbert Q. Filsenberg. And Amanda is asking about long sort of long names, like long Hawaiian names, or we're talking about I know a lot of folks sort of in I think that the Maori people have fairly long names, etc. So just keep that in mind when you're designing, right? Is that you may have to accommodate long names. That's right. We only call people by their full name when they're in trouble, right? So that's the only reason we use the middle name. That's right. Okay, so we've got our name out there, and that's our consideration, right? Is how big does this need to be? And down here in the layer, what we're going to do is we're going to name this layer. You rename layers by hitting return when you select them, and we're going to call this the name, right? And now let's go ahead and duplicate that and call this one the title. And remember, we're styling these. We're thinking about how these are going to look when we whenever we style these up. Sherbert is often in trouble because he likes to chew things. So we would probably want to make the titles of people, their what they call themselves in the world. We would call this, we'd probably use, maybe take it from bold to medium, or maybe go even further down to regular. Sherbert is a scamp, I'll tell you. I can tell you, people. Now, here's something else I want to point out when dealing with text and when designing with text. Have a look here at the anchor points of these things. The anchor points are in alignment vertically over top of each other, but you'll notice that the layer bounds are not, right? And this is because the way fonts kind of work, the P and the S kind of glyphs of Filson anyway, their relationship to the baseline is a little bit different. So always judge your text by where the anchor point is and not where the edge of this thing is, because maybe the next person isn't a private detective. He's CEO of, what would that be? That would be the, I don't know, chief eating officer. That's what he does. Right. And you need to make sure that these anchor points are aligned. So line them up by the anchor point, not by the edge of the layer. That's my advice on that. But these are two things is going to be some of the primary things that people interact with and that they alter. So keep that in mind. Again, what am I allowing people to change? These two things are what I'm allowing them to change. Of critical importance is to understand descenders of fonts. So if I were to stick this up here, that's too tight, way too tight, because the descenders might bump into each other. So the descenders of the G might bump into this layer here. So we want to keep them separated, right? Oh yeah, that's right. Yeah, Ben Marriott's Kimchi the dog. He's a cool dog. Ben Marriott's a cool dude too. So is this readable? This is the question we want to ask ourselves. Is this readable? Is this readable? Is this readable? We want to put something behind here and understand if it's easy to read this font. And if not, then we want to start adding things to make it more readable. And one of the things that we might simply add to it is a drop shadow, right? We want to increase contrast to increase readability. So we could put a drop shadow on here, pretty classic thing to do. And we might soften that out because I like a good soft drop shadow. Let me just grab some agua real quick. Good. Glug, glug, glug. So we're trying to offset this so that we can read it a little better. So that might get you where you want to go. Alternatively, it might be worth dropping out into the mix a solid of some kind. And we're going to put this behind everything. We are going to make this just a simple black solid. And we're going to bring that down like so. Into this area. We're going to change its size. We're going to change its size down. If you were hanging out for our little talk about shape layers yesterday, then you know how some of this goes. But the idea here is let's see, would it be How do we get this to pop off of the background, right? And that's what we're trying to solve with these objects here. Let's go 240 on this. It's probably a bit too big, but we'll figure it out. We're being a bit big and kind of grand with these, right? We're going maybe larger than we need to. So maybe what we'll do is we might end up shrinking this down later. But for now, let's keep working on this. So if, for example, someone in the chat said that drop shadows is not good. I think it's Jason Rose is saying, doesn't like the look of drop shadows. Neither do I. But sometimes they are necessary evils. Maybe not evil, but we can in here, we can go ahead and we can add in here a gradient fill perhaps. I'm just going to drag that out like this. Go into the gradient fill, edit the gradient, set both of these to be dark. And then let's see. Up here are our opacity stops, and let's just drag the opacity down like this. This is a very classic mode to deal with. To deal with is great to make that happen. So we can bring this, and we'll bring this opacity down. So it doesn't need to be. It doesn't need to be super pronounced, right? It's not. Doesn't have to be super intense in order for us to just get this to bounce off of the background, right? But you know, some things are unavoidable. Okay, so let me just move this anchor point over here, and I'm going to parent both of these things to that. All right. Oh, Stuart is asking, how did I get that gradient to go on? So in this layer, what I did was I went into the contents, went into the rectangle, and I added a gradient fill. You can also kind of use the contextual menus up here. And then you can go into the gradient and you can edit the gradient, clicking edit gradient down here at the bottom. And that'll get you this. There you go. We're learning a lot of international uses of the word up. So I've parented these things to this layer here because they're going to do a simple translate in, I think, because we have to start thinking about how these things are going to show up. So I'm going to call open the position. I'm going to call open the opacity. I'm going to grab these. And let's say we resolve this thing by 2 seconds. You know, let's get it done by 2 seconds. And at the start, the opacity is going to be 0. And the position is going to be over this way a little bit. And we're going to ease at the end. Okay, we're going to ease at the end. Like this. Okay, and then we're going to take this, push back like so. And so we're manipulating the graph editor here a little bit. So the graph editor is where we do our nuanced stuff. So let's not worry about the text for now. Let's just worry about this thing showing up. That feels nice and subtle. Let's just real quick not look at the wonderful dog. And let's just see how we feel about this. This checkerboard is also very helpful. This is our transparency grid that I recommend having a look at. So there we go. Okay, so that's coming in, feeling it, feeling that. Okay, now we're going to look at these and make this happen. Oh, man. Okay, so now we're going to get into some text animators. Text animators are your best friend in all of the world, at least when it comes to animating text. They want to help you. So I am going to animate the text. I'm going to animate it. Let's animate the position of the text, and let's add into that the property of opacity. Okay. And what we're setting when we set these two things is the initial state. So the initial state, I'm going to push this over by 100. I'm going to bring its opacity down. So this is the initial state that we're starting with. Now we're going to go in, put a small bouncing ball behind the text. Maybe we might be able to do that. We could try to work it in. Need more agua. Just trying to be conscious while we build this thing. I don't want to run out of time before we get to the essential parts. Okay, so I'm going to go into advanced. I'm going to change the shape from square to ramp up. I'm going to ease low on this thing. And then I'm going to animate the text by altering the size of the selector and by altering the offset of the selector to push the selector through the text. Okay, and it's going to go from -20, setting keyframes for both of these, bumping ahead. This one's going to go up to 50. This one's going to go up to 100. If you were hanging out for our talk about text and text selectors and all that good stuff, this will be old hat for you. We're just going to be touching it briefly today, only because we got so many other things to do. We've got so much stuff to get to. But here's an important thing. When we are dealing with our text, our texts, plural, is to... Oh, I need a lot of agua because talking really dehydrates me. What we need to have happen in here is to make sure that this is based on percentage, and to make sure that this kind of thing, no matter what length of word we put in here, it will be totally cool. Right. So no matter what we type in, we want the timing to remain consistent as we're using it. Okay. So speaking of consistent timing, hey, how about this? Malik, I would not be drinking bourbon because I do not partake in alcohol. It's not part of my lifestyle. And I don't judge people who do. It's just very bad for my body. So I'm just copying and pasting the text animator around from one layer to the other. So we end up with this. But it is early here. Like, it's only 10:30, and I have a rich full day of activities ahead of me. So here we go. So we got this going. We can tell, though, that names are typically shorter. Names are typically shorter than titles, right? Usually. So maybe you want the title to take longer to animate than the name or something like that. So think about having variety. However, visually, one is smaller than the other, so we can speed those along. So we're going to do something like that. That's right, Jason. I work in After Effects and I don't drink. I drink plenty of liquids. It's totally fine. Okay, totally cool. Chief Eating Officer. I'm happy with this. And Leonard is asking if I'm from Canada. Not only am I from Canada, but I also live in Canada. Very super Canadian around here. That's how I do it. So we've got our text and stuff animating on. I'm happy with this for now, let's say. Let's say I'm happy with this for the time being. I want to now move this. Boop, 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 boop. I want to start putting things into the template to allow other people to edit them later. How would we do that? Or are there other things that we want to add in here? There was talk of a bouncing ball behind the text. I like the idea. Let's see. Here we go. Let's add. Okay. Now I think I said in the intro that we might be talking about expressions. What to do? I'm wondering out loud if now is the time to talk about expressions. And I think we must. Yeah, that's right, Scott. We gotta get a company logo in here. which I will not be drawing. I do not have one on hand. Oh, I do have a logo sitting around. Oh boy. Oh, self. So good. Let me just grab tutorials, logos. Now, the one thing about dropping logos in, if it's going to be hard baked, I don't know why I'm saying hard baked in here, but it's something that we do not yet have the functionality to alter, right? So if we put it in, it's going to live there. It's going to be there forever, right? So I'm actually just going to bring out the After Effects icon. You know, I like After Effects icon. I know, kind of lame sometimes. And it would be very easy to just stick this over here in this corner, right? Very easy entirely, that I could just do like this, you know? And then I would just parent this to that. Okay, so now those things are together. Maybe I would, depending on the brand guides, I don't want to hurt anybody's brand, probably do like this. Now we end up with, there we go. So now this is coming in, right? So you could easily slap a logo on that side, right? Now, why is that super easy? Well, it's because all of the things we know that if we come back and we edit them, they'll be building forward. They'll be building in the direction away from it. No muss, no fuss, right? No trubs. No trubs at all. Let me just go ahead and go Window, Essential Graphics, because I want to start showing how we build the functionality that we want. And Stuart's asking, he's got so many questions. Come at me, man. Give me these questions. We're here to get these questions. If we want to make this into a template, right, we have to first in Essential Graphics choose which composition we're going to work on. We're going to choose the lower third because that is the comp that we're working with. And here's the thing: we need to start pushing properties into this space, right? How are we going to do that? Oh, well, how are we going to do that? We're going to hit solo supported properties. Sure, that's one way to do it. And that'll bring up everything that is supported that we can throw into this space, right? This is all the functionality we can give somebody for them to alter later if they so desire. I'm going to try standing taller. I feel like I'm just falling out of the frame slowly every day. So the name, we want to bring that name source text up here. Just click and drag. And then you need to name this. So let's say name. And then you can start typing in something new. And it'll update. So see, it updates real time. Sweet. Now let's add, I think that's all that I wanted from that. Let's add the title in there. Title. And remember, these things that we're saying here, name and title, that's what someone who opens this in Premiere will see as their controls, right? That's the title of this thing, this menu item that's going to be available over there. So keep that in mind. Okay, name and title. This is the gradient background. Do we want to give people any kind of functionality around that? I'm thinking about it. Oh, there's a question. Can we use these templates in Premiere Rush? Good question. I think only specific templates can work in Premiere Rush. And that functionality may be expanding. It may have already happened. I've not been reading the press releases very well. But hopefully someone in the chat can do the research and get to you on those. That's definitely something to look up, especially because of the functionality of Rush is very template based, right? So hopefully, I don't know, maybe Tim in the chat can do a little bit of research on that one and figure out what it takes to make that happen. I don't know. I don't want to tell people what to do. Speaking of, though, there's a lot of great questions in here. If you have questions and you happen to be watching this on the YouTube stream, please come at us. Please come to us on behance.net/live so I can see what you're asking, because I will be missing all of the questions that are only in the YouTube because I can't look at all the chats at once. But I'm wondering what functionality we want to give someone here. Do we want to let people change the color of this gradient, for example? I would. But, oh no, that is not a supported property. It's not supported. How can I hack this to get that support that I want, right? So what we're going to do is we're going to go in here and we're going to get the tint. We're going to grab color correction tint, and we're going to drop that onto this layer here, right? And what we're going to do is we are going to say, hey, map the black to a different color. Oh, look at that. That's updating. Let's do a quick little look to see how that would look if Sherbert was on here. Oh, there he is. Boop. Something like that. Okay. And let's see. We're only using one color in the whole thing, right? There is no black to white transition happening. There could be. We could have in here, let's open up its gradient colors. And because we're going black to black, we're going to change that. We're actually going to go black to white like that. So it's actually going black to white as the gradient is also disappearing. So what that means is that we might end up using like a weird different color like so, which could add a little bit of subtlety if you like. But we can actually drag these tint colors up into here. So these can be our gradient controls. Yannick is asking about expressions. There are some wonderful expressions references you can look for. Adobe has some in their help zone. Also AE enhancers I would recommend checking out. They're very good for stuff. But also remember that our expressions language is now JavaScript. So if you can find a reference for JavaScript, then you will find everything you want to know. Expressions do not equal scripts. Steve is asking. Expressions are expressions. Scripts are scripts. So just remember they are different things. Expressions are things that we write down here on layers, right? We write them on properties. Scripts are something that can be triggered externally. So all of these bad boys up here are a bunch of scripts that I can run. Expressions are things that explain or describe or express a relationship between properties here on the timeline. So they're similar but different. Hopefully that makes sense. Speaking of, I think it's time to write some. I think we've given some functionality, right, that I think people should be very pleased with. They should be pleased with the functionality we've provided. But what if instead of putting the logo here, we wanted the logo to be here? I don't know why we would want that, but we might, right? Maybe if I scale this down, I'll feel better about that design choice. But like if we wanted a logo that lived at the end of this text, right? So I'm going to grab this. I'm going to just push it over like this. Now it's like the logo's on his nose. What a cutie. But we want the position of this. We want the position of this to be relative to the length of this. What do you think about that? Right? Well, don't worry. Don't worry. I'm here to help. I'm here to help. Okay. Step one. We should parent this layer to that layer. All right. And I'm going to hold down Shift as I do it, which causes its properties to kind of be zeroed out a little bit. Okay. Now, the thing I want to alter about it is the position. That's what I want to alter about it. I'm going to hold down Alt, click on the position, and we're going to write our first expression of the morning. Good morning. Time to express ourselves. And create a variable, var, and the variable is I'm going to call L, maybe. Variable L, capital L, no, lowercase l. And it's going to be equal to this layer. Now, don't worry if a lot of these things are esoteric and strange. There are a lot of references for this, and we can go slow if you want. But what we're going to be saying in here is this layer, talking about the layer it is, dot parent. I'm talking about this layer's parent now, dot source rect at time. I'm talking about this layer's parent, source rect at time, which is the size of the rectangle created by that layer. Now, here's a key point in here. When will we be looking at the rectangle size? I'm going to be looking at the rectangle size at 3 seconds. That's what I'm putting in the arguments space. Why am I saying at 3 seconds? Well, that's when the animation is done. So that's when I'm going to be measuring the size of it. And so that's what I've decided. And then I'm going to put a semicolon so that we end out that line. Okay. Now, so we've created the variable L, right? The end result of this, the end result of all of our labors at the end of this must be in the format x, comma, y. Why? Because this is a two-part property. It has this, comma, this. So at the end, we need to express whatever we're doing as this, comma, this. Horizontal coordinate, vertical coordinate. 0, comma, 1, right? Part 0, part 1. Part x, part y. So we're going to create a variable called x, and we're going to create a variable called y. I hope that makes sense. So we're making a variable called x that we know will go in here, and a variable called y that will go in here, and that will be our end result. Now the y value going up, down, right? Up, down. We don't really know what that's going to be, and in fact, we don't need to control it that much. So what I'm going to type in is just value, and then in square brackets, 1. Value 1 means whatever value I've put here in the 1 spot. This is going to be a confusing and weird thing. Why isn't this in the number 1 spot and this the number 2 spot? Well, this is the number 0 spot and this is the number 1 spot. That's just how it is. We're a base 0 situation. We basic, we zero it out. That's how it is. So that's going to allow me to manually control up and down. Variable x is going to be the value that you find in the 0 spot plus the variable we called L. And in fact, we need to add more here. We need to get more specific. Which part of the source rectitime am I interested in? I'm interested in the width, right? That's what I'm really interested in. Not just the rectangle itself. I need to know the width. I need the number. Give me that number, please. There are 4 components. Height, width, left, top. Width is what we want. Anyway, value 0 plus L. And, oh, hey, we got our first problem. Oopsie doodle. What am I saying in here? Oh, I used capital L. Happens to me too. So now I'm just going to manually move this. I'm going to manually scale this. I'm going to push it over here. Okay. But what's going to happen? Well, when I type in, I don't know, temp, notice that as I'm typing, that thing over there is moving. Yes, it's going. I've defeated it. Right? Because these now have a relationship, right? So hopefully this kind of makes sense for folks. What have we done? What have we done? We have changed the position of this to not be fixed, but to be variable. Okay? What moves, what changes, right? What is fixed? What is variable? What is dynamic? These are the questions you want to ask whenever you're making a template. Okay? What am I allowing people to change, and what will change based on those inputs? Okay? For example, we could have chosen to have this rectangle down here be constantly linked to the size of the text. That's more work than I want to do today. So it remains as it is. It remains normal. It's just hanging out, right? It's just a space. However, this element we wanted to make dynamic. And we wanted it to be dynamic so that it would adjust based on the size of this layer. Right? And, you know, I think that's totally reasonable. That's a reasonable thing to do. a lot of great chat in here about wanting to see some automatic coding. But yeah, oh boy. So Scott is saying maybe show a simple expression like tagging text color to each other. Yeah, of course, color in After Effects is another pile of danger, right? Lots of dangerous stuff. Now, Tim is asking different ways to structure this, right? I've chosen to structure this variable combination of things, right? And I do this because it keeps it very clear in my mind about what's happening. In fact, this could all live on one line. And, you know, this could all be one single line of code. Breaking it up this way makes it easier to explain what's happening in its components. But, you know, hopefully it does make sense. And Stuart's saying he has an error in his code already. Ugh, absolutely. But never fear. Scott was saying, let's do something simple, right? Let's just do something simple, please. Okay, we'll do something simpler. All right, we'll do something simpler. Let me just remove these from my Mogurt. I'm going to make a new adjustment layer. And this new adjustment layer is going to hold some controls for us, some expression controls. Okay, dial open the expression controls. Now, this is going to simplify a lot of your life, I think. I hope. In these expression controls, for example, I don't know if we're going to have time to talk about the drop-down menu, but I'm going to drag one in anyway. Let's drag in a color control. Let's drag in another color control. Okay, so I'm going to name these something like name color. And I don't want to hear any comments about how I spell color. And what we want to do is give our end user the ability to choose some colors, to be able to pick some colors, right? So these colors, we are going to drag the name color in here, and we're going to drag the title color in here, and you know, maybe we're going to pick sort of these colors here right out of the logo to start with as our default. But if those are the colors, how do we make the text into those colors? How do we make them start referencing, right? Well, I can use something like the fill. So I'm going to grab fill, I'm going to bring it down here, and the fill effect, let's put it above the drop shadow so we're not filling in the drop shadow. And this color, we're just going to pick whip this pick whip, drag it up here to the name color. Boom, like this. Now, of course, this may not be what we want. You never know. But the reason is, the reason that I would use an external layer here to hold these things is that we might actually end up parenting even more things to that, right? We might only allow two colors to ever be controlled in this world, and we might want them to be dynamically linked, right? So that's why we would use the pick whip to do stuff like that. So then as we start kind of changing this, like that, then you can notice that everything starts dynamically changing, right? So we're allowing these things to work out, and so it kind of it allows us to keep things dynamic, to keep things normalized. So Chief Eating Officer, we want to apply the similar kind of thing. So we'll take the fill from this and we'll drop it here in the title. And we just want to make sure that it is dynamically linking. Ugh, there's too many things open. Everyone, there's too many things open. So I'm going to go into the fill here. I'm going to go into the effects up here. So the title color, and we want this color here to pick whip to that. And you can see exactly what it's doing, right? That what it's doing is we're just pointing it to an address. So if you think about what you're writing here in terms of like an IP address or a street address, we're saying, hey, color, you know what you're going to do? You're going to look into this comp. You're going to look for a layer named this. Each time we put a period, we're getting more specific. Every time we have that full stop, we're going more specific. So this comp, but more specifically a layer named this, and more specifically an effect named this on that layer in that comp. And that's what we end up with here. So that's kind of what we're doing when we're pick whipping. We're just pointing it to an address to look. And hopefully things line up. You could point color to value and all this stuff and get errors, but these things are behaving as we would expect. So now I'm making all kinds of bad color choices. But now we've given this thing here some abilities. Let's see. Let's map the white. Let's map the black to that. Boom. So now with these two choices, we're able to start modifying all kinds of things about what we've got going on here. So you notice that, because they're dynamically linked together, everything is kind of changing and strange. So chief eating officer, do I have a problem on that? Yeah, the fill's got to go above. Boom. There we go. Now we got stuff popping out. So what we've made is fairly nasty, mostly because of my color choices. So I'm going to reset those to something palatable. And again, we kind of need to start making these choices of what are we actually going to allow people to modify, right? So for example, if we don't want to let people do bad things to the color, we wouldn't allow that to exist, right? But yeah, linking via dragging, that's a thing we do. That's how we get it done. We are coming into the finish line here though. So what we need to do is take what we have here and turn it into MoGRT. So we're going to do that by hitting the Export Motion Graphics Template button. Okay. So first, I'm sorry, Sherbert, you've done a very good job. You can go lie down now. I'm going to remove him from the composition because he doesn't really need to be hanging out in here. And we're going to give our template a title. Call this the lower third Behance stream. That's what we were doing today. And what we're going to do is we're going to click here. We're going to click the Export Motion Graphics Template. You'll be asked to save. Please do so. Please do what it says. And then you will be presented with this dialog box. And here we have to choose the destination. I'm gonna choose to drop it in my tutorials bin where I keep things. Now here we're going to be asked some compatibility kind of questions. Warn me if this template uses fonts that are not available on Adobe fonts, meaning that someone else may not have access to the fonts we're using, right? Give me that warning. And then the next one here is warn me in After Effects needs to be installed in order to customize the template, because maybe the person who uses this later needs to have After Effects installed. Maybe if you're doing some things, I think particles might be one of those things that triggers this. Warn me if there are text controls that cannot be edited in Premiere with the Premiere Pro type tool. Oh, that's a mouthful. And then please add some keywords so you can search and find your own templates, right? Yannick is asking, what is the most complicated thing to pull off for me in After Effects? Good question. It's interesting. There have been some things that I've been struggling with, mostly in terms of dynamic graphs. The most complicated thing I've been trying to pull off recently has been to make a graph that auto sorts itself by bar size. So, how would like if a bar, if one bar passes another, it needs to bump up, it needs to supplant the others and move up in ranks. So I've been trying to figure out the best way to make that happen. I've managed to do it in a very rigid way. I haven't been able to do it in a very smooth way. That's kind of where I'm at with those types of things, but I don't know if that really answers the question. Yeah, things that are dynamic where it's unclear what the driver. Oh, my throat today. I'm in so much pain. Hence the water. But yes, so that's what's most complicated for me. Example, lower third, doggo. So these keywords will help me find this later in my giant bin of things I'm trying to find. Okay, now I'm going to hit OK. It's going to verify error-free. No trubs. I don't want no trubs. Trubs is a guy that can't get no love from me. So now we're going to kick it into Premiere. Kick it. And where we need to go, Window. We need to go into my libraries. And let's see. Tutorials. Am I going to find it in here? View by type. View by group. Oh, no. Oh, no. Did I put it in the wrong place? Oh, no. I think I did put it in the wrong place. Let me see if I can find it. There's already too many things in here. Oh, boy. Maybe I saved it in the wrong place. Oh, boy. It's going to be one of those days, folks. Oh, maybe I need to refresh this. I better not. I know what I'm going to do. I know what I will do instead. Because I keep misplacing these things, I'm going to export this motion graphics template. I'm not going to put it there. I'm going to put it on my local drive. Okay. I'm going to put it on my desktop. Okay. And then I'll be able to find it later, and I'll feel very good about it. Okay. I know, I put it in tutorials and then it wasn't there. Like, I'm looking at my tutorials bin, So, let's see. Where do I need to be looking here? Oh, is it because I'm searching? Is that what's giving me the trouble? Libraries, yes. Anyway, we're gonna go Window. Essential Graphics. Here it is. Essential Graphics. Great. And add one from the desktop. Add this guy. Boop. Now I have to find it again. So now you're going to need to like sort and find and get the things you want. As you can see, there are a bunch. This is why naming things is important. That's right. There was, who's that for? Do I have something on my desktop named that? What is on my desktop? So, Steve, I don't know what you're seeing, but there is no such thing on my desktop. I did a piece for a South African company. That's probably the folders you're seeing. So, there he is. There he is. I named it. I named it good. Anyway, so we're going to cross our fingers that this comes together. As this thing loads up, you just drag it out onto here. Yeah. Adobe Mogurt's billions to choose from. I know. Should just search for doggo. So now we can see how this plays on our timeline, right? And when you click on it, your Essential Graphics window that you have open is going to behave exactly as the stuff looks over here. So these are the things Oh, Yannick, you're from South Africa. Awesome. Maybe you're familiar with the resorts I was working for. They were doing some graphics to kind of show off some of their service offerings. Anyway, so here in the essential graphics area, I just realized that my face is like over top of what I want to be showing. I'm going to move this whole window over here so that we can enjoy it over in this space, which will be nicer. Yeah. Yeah, keywords only come into play if I happen to add the keywords. Roland is right. So notice, though, the controls down here are exactly as we've set them up in After Effects, right? So the name, we can retype a new name. And you'll notice that things are working as we hoped. So you'll notice that this is adjusting, you know, everything is adjusting as we had anticipated. Now, one of the things that's great about this is you still get these eyedroppers. Oh, I love that we get the eyedroppers. The eyedroppers don't always work in the best ways, but you know, it's like if I wanted to sample some of this guy's fur to get the colors that I'm really interested in, or sample colors out of the frame to get those in. Oh, big burps out of me. And everything is working perfectly, right? So hopefully that fits and is good for things to work from. And hopefully this sort of basic, this is our first template that we would make, and hopefully it helps you with some of what you might be wanting to do. Because I know some folks have some corporate projects that are coming up that they want to deal with. So, but because we have more time, I do want to talk about some other things you might consider. Okay, if you want to take it to the next level, let's say, just saying. Oh yes, people are noticing my very shiny bald scalp, which is very excellent. So if you saw this here on Twitter or maybe Instagram, at EC Abrams on those places, this has a little feature that is a little bit extra. I mean, I'm a lot extra, but this is a little bit extra in that we are using our source rect at time in order to make this underline happen, right? So we're able to use the source rect at time that we talked about a little bit in order to make this happen. But yeah, it's good. It's a good way to kind of practice making things dynamic is to work with this source rect at time out here. So for example, template here is going to resize and this is going to resize and this is going to be dynamic, right? And that's something to think about, right? You know, hopefully that makes sense, right? That we're setting up this variable that's pointing to its parent again, looking at its mom-mop or pop-pop, and it's adjusting its size based on the width of its parent, and we're adding a little bit to that so that it comes out the other sides, and you know, we're still using value 1 here, so all this stuff is going on. But yeah, this is a way that you can make an underline happen. Very nice, very dynamic, very easy stuff. Not a lot to it. It's just a little expression in here. So hopefully that makes sense. But yeah, this is a good thing to kind of work into your day. Another thing I want to talk about while we're in here is the idea of retiming. So lower thirds, you don't really know how long this needs to hang out on your timeline, right? What we're looking at here is if I needed this to be longer or shorter, you know, how would I do that, right? Well, if I wanted to just shorten it, I would shorten it up in here and then it goes away sooner, right? But if you had very interesting and worthwhile and bespoke in and out animations for this stuff, like we do in here, for example, as you can see, we have the title arriving, we have the title leaving. If we wanted to protect, these animations, the timing of these animations, such that they don't get squished or squashed or whatever as we're playing with the template. Oh, my throat. Oh, my goodness. Oh, I'm going to need to rest. I'm going to need to rest after this. What we can do is use markers to protect those regions with a feature known as protected regions. I'm going to set a marker, which I do by hitting the little asterisks on the keyboard. Then I'm going to go enable protected region, and it turns into this blue bar, right? And so what we got here is this thing is going away, and it's all gone by here. And so I'm going to just dial this in to be there. I'm going to go to the front. I'm going to repeat the same process. I'll go through it again. We hit the asterisks to create our marker. We enable the protected region by right-clicking and going through it. Then we drag this to protect everything we want to protect. Okay. Now, what does that mean? What does it mean we're protecting the regions? You know, I'm going to set my marker here, or sorry, I'm going to set my playhead here. I'm going to trim the comp down so that it's only this long, right? What does it mean that we've protected these regions, right? As Steve is saying, this is why water is bad for you. It clearly is hurting my body. I'm going to go and make a new composition. It's going to be 20 seconds long. Okie doke. And I'm going to drag that example down here. And you'll notice here on my timeline, these blue zones are still protected in here. We can still see the blue zones. Check this out. Yannick, now you're making me, you're getting me laughing now. Because I'm expressing things out of my body. So now I can make this layer longer or shorter, right? You can see it seems to make my computer angry. But check this out. Even though I'm making things longer or shorter, here, boop, 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 beep, these regions at the start and end do not stretch. They do not change. Only the middle is stretched and changed. This behaves the same in After Effects as it does in Premiere. And in fact, a great way to test your MoGerts, to test your motion graphics templates, is to load them into a comp in After Effects, twirl into them, and then you will twirl into something called master properties. Now, what is that? Well, check this out. Check this out. I'm excited to share this. We're going to load up the example, and we're going to throw some things in there. I'm going to throw some source text in there. I'm going to throw this source text in there. That should be enough for now. I'm going to reload this and bring that example back in. Now, if you want to test this out on your... Steve, I'm not familiar with what W.C. Fields thought about water. Was he anti-water? I don't know enough about W.C. Fields. So here, I'm now able to twirl in, and look at this. We got a new friend. We got transform, and we've got something called master properties in here. Now, master properties is literally just the properties that we are allowing other people to modify about this template. This is just how they look in here, right? So here in After Effects, I can edit the value of this to say, I don't know, here we go, hanging out. I'm going to type in hanging out, boom. And just look at that, it changes. What? How great is that? So it's updating its changes. My first hanging out, that doesn't make any sense. Thanks for hanging out. I'm going to change that. So here we go. Now it says, thanks for hanging out. Now I can duplicate this. I can move this ahead. I've now created two instances of the same composition. And now I can edit these things here. It can be unique to each other, right? But what I'm going to do is I'm going to push the changes from the original so we end up with this, okay? What's so good about templates is that not only can we use them in Premiere, but we can also use them in After Effects. From the one comp that I've created, this example composition, I can have multiple instances of it hang out here on my timeline, and editing one doesn't edit the other. If you've worked with multiple things like this on timelines in After Effects, you know that it is an annoyance to have to make 20 copies, to have lower third one, lower third two, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera, or whatever reusable element you're going to be putting in here. It's great to just have one comp live in the project, but multiple instances that have editable parts about them here in this space, right? So this is another use of motion graphics templates, is another use of what we call the master properties function. And hopefully that opens up and unlocks some ideas for you to work with. I'm trying to think of what else is critical to know about this while we're here. And I would say if you have questions about this kind of thing, how this can fit into your workflow, please let me know. And I'd love to get you through. Asking what is Mogurt? Mogurt is the file extension motion graphics template that we find at the end of our templates when we make them. Mogurt does sound like yogurt, but it's just shorter than saying motion graphics template all the time. And it kind of rolls off the tongue in a nice way. Motion graphics template, Mogurt. I guess the T should be large. That's what I'm missing. There we go. Now it's perfect. Now it's like a weird .com tech company. So hopefully that kind of makes sense. I do want to reiterate the things that we talked about, though, while we're here. I want to, for those of you who are coming in late, don't worry. You can watch all of the replays later. So if you want to watch this back, but we also have a lot of things coming up for the rest of the day. So you'll probably want to hang out for those, especially Mr. Cooker, who's coming up in just a little bit. He's going to be doing some awesome band graphics. So it's going to be fantastic. Let's see. To recap what we've done today, what have we been working on here? Well, we've created a lower third and we've converted it into a template, okay? And in order to make this lower third, we had to make a lot of design considerations, right? These design considerations are, where can this thing live, and what it can do, and who's going to use it, and what they're going to use it for, right? You always want to think about those things, but primarily we want to set this thing up so that it behaves the way we want. For the text, we made sure that the paragraph alignment was correct so that it's going to be building away from the margin as these things are changing. And we made sure that if someone types in a very long name, it doesn't look strange when they type in that incredibly long name. We're designing for those considerations, those consids, as we type these things out. We dragged out these guides to help us keep things in the lower third of this template and above the title safe, right? Which we can call up, calling up our proportion grid, calling up our title and action safe, calling up our grids and guides and dragging out new guides to help us align things up. That was kind of step one. We had to decide what we were going to allow people to edit, what we were going to allow people to change. So it was important for us to understand what properties we wanted to allow people to edit later and what things we're going to adjust based on what we're editing in here. And Amanda's saying, recap of what we did today. I guess they were just drawing Sherbert wearing a detective hat, which is awesome. I want to see that. I want to see that picture. Then after that, after we decided what we were going to allow people to edit, we started linking things up with expressions. That right. It was kind of a wild scene of typing things out, of having all of these expressions. Oh boy. I mean, the only one that we actually had to write was this one, this little four-liner, really. And when you break it down, four little lines, not that much going on, but not many characters, but oh boy, do they make a difference when you put them in the right order. That allowed us to position something based on the text layer's size. Oh, Amanda, I mean, to send it to me, you can just I don't know, link it at me on Behance. You can get it at me on Twitter, get it at me on Instagram. Figure that stuff out. I'm at EC Abrams all over the internet. You can find me at EC Abrams on Twitter, at EC Abrams on Instagram, those places. But the other things we did, we set up these variables so that we could reference things dynamically. And so that, for example, this little logo would always live at the end of this text line, right? And so we wanted these things to be dynamically linked together. And Michelle is right. These are JavaScript. It's exactly JavaScript. And you know, it would be great to have a stream only about expressions. I'm down. I'm always down. In fact, come hang out with me on the weekend, and we'll do that. I'm hanging out here on Behance a little bit every weekend, so come and hang out, have a good time. But yeah, it's a great space to hang out and learn these things, and hopefully it has been helpful for you. The other thing we did was that we started to link things together. We started to link them together using the pick whip. We don't have to write out complicated things. We can just link them together with this. We can link one property to the other. We can make things dynamic. We used an adjustment layer here to hold, for example, some colors. And we linked everything up to those colors, forcing everything to be the same color. So we only have to change 2 colors, and it changes the colors of the whole thing. So I think we did a very excellent job of that. Afterwards, we exported this thing, giving it an excellent name, giving it excellent properties so we could find it. Refreshing. I'm very nervous about refreshing my Premiere interface when I'm streaming, just because of how things work. But yeah, and what else was important? We talked a bit about protected regions. Protected regions are a thing that allows us to preserve the timing of our animation when we bring it into Premiere, when we reuse it in After Effects. And we talked a little bit about reusing things in After Effects and working our master properties in here. And that was pretty much it. And you know, I've done an excellent job of timing this up, because we end on the thank you message. Thank you so much for hanging out with me. It's been a treat. It's always a fun time to come and hang out and to share with you the app that I use so much and that I enjoy as part of my life and my workflow and my creative endeavors. And I hope that this maybe inspires you to make more things with it, to make more interesting things, and to maybe push you out of your comfort zone. Not that I want to make anybody uncomfortable, but just so that maybe it'll expand what you do doing this kind of thing. And yeah, it's the sort of thing that I hope opens up a world of creativity for you. This app was very formative in me getting into design when I was younger, so it has a special place in my heart for me. And yeah, so thank you everyone for coming out, and thank you everyone in the chat for you know, helping each other out, and for your great suggestions, and for making me laugh. It's a lot of fun. Hang out with us, though, for the rest of the day. We do have a rich, full day of activities coming up here. So if we have a look at the schedule one more time before I take off, we've got Paul Tranny coming up next with a creative challenge for you in Photoshop. We've got motion graphics with Colton Cooker, which is going to be great. So if you're looking for more After Effects streaming, Colton Cooker coming up in a mere hour or so, less than an hour, half an hour. Hang out. It's going to be great. So get your beverages and make sure that you are hydrated for that. And then, of course, we got Illustrator stuff. We got packaging design. We got Adobe XD. We got Drawn along with Kyle T. Webster. And then the design off with Voodoo Val. Oh, man, you gotta hang out for this stuff. It's so good. And let's see, what else is important? If you want to see more of me in your life, I'm at EC Abrams all over the internet. I'm Evan Abrams. I talk about this stuff all the time. And thank you all so much for hanging out and making this part of your day and your creative journey. I really appreciate it. If you want to find me on the internet, I'm at EC Abrams on Twitter, at EC Abrams on Instagram, and EC Abrams on YouTube, where you'll find more tutorials kind of like this, but like more pre-recorded. And we'll be back at you with more. That's about it for me. We're here at 11:55. I got to make room so that things can refresh and we get more people on. So have a good night, have a good day, have a good afternoon, wherever you are in the world. And I will see you again real soon. Thanks again and have a great day.